Good evening, everyone. I'm Curtis Hannock, the Douglas County Healthy Youth Coalition Coordinator, and I would like to welcome you all to our webinar that we'll be having, how to have hard conversations and create inclusive communities tonight with Rosalind Wiseman. Before we get started, I wanted to take some time and kind of set up the tone and also let you know a little bit more about our coalition. So give me a moment here. I'm going to share my screen. And you should all be able to see that now. Great. Everything look good? Yeah, a few housekeeping for tonight. Be aware that we're presenting through Zoom, and there's going to be a short delay between our presentation and as it transfers over to Zoom. We have a volunteer, Molly, who will be capturing constructive comments and questions from the YouTube chat section and forwarding them to us in the presenters. And lastly, I would really appreciate if you take a few moments to think about, and we lost a student, Luca Hertling, Thunder Ridge High School student, committed suicide on Monday. We're deeply, our thoughts and prayers are with his family. You know, this is why we are at the coalition are doing what we're doing, is to try to do what we can to take care of our young people. Thank you. So I want to give, before we move on, I want to thank some of our stakeholders and members who helped out with this. I mean, there's just a long list of people, but I really want to appreciate their help. I want to give a shout out to the Douglas County School District Counseling and Health, Wellness, and Prevention teams. The coalition has been partnering with those two, and we are going to continue to partner. We're pretty excited about mapping out a good strategy for next year, webinars and in-person training for parents and our community members. So we'll be working with them and collaborating and listening to the community and trying to identify and put together some real knockout presenters and you know, some great trainings that parents and our community is looking for. You know, I also want to, you know, show appreciation towards our grantors, Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. We received that grant, as well as Tri-County Health Department funding for this evening's event. I want to thank Cultures of Dignity team for lowering their costs for these services, and that's greatly appreciated, you know, especially with coalitions don't have a ton of money. So thanks Rosalind and to your team. I also want to thank the youth and vulnerable community members who agreed to share their personal story with Rosalind over the past 2 weeks. And also want to give another shout out to the Douglas County Equity and Inclusion Committee on our coalition and our Equity and Growth Zone group that we partner with. So I want to thank them for all their work. Who we are, Douglas County Healthy Youth Coalition. We've been around since 2016. We received, you know, we're under a 5-year grant from 2019 through 2024 to address underage drinking, 9 to 20, as well as some other key areas, substances. In the spring of, I'm sorry, I didn't put a date there. In the spring of last year, the leadership team approved the expansion of our mission to focus in on mental health because of the rising mental health concerns that we were seeing, and that was pre-COVID. So we were very concerned about that, and we wanted to start taking action around that. Our vision, as you can see, is an empowered community that promotes the health and well-being of all youth here in Douglas County. And our mission is we put the health and well-being of Douglas County youth first through advocacy, education, and community partnerships. And lastly, you know, a lot of people use that term coalitions. I want to be really clear with us, you know, it's a formal agreement and collaboration between citizens, groups, sectors of the community in which each group retains its identity, but all agree to work together towards a common goal of enhancing one another's capacity to achieve a common purpose or a goal by sharing risks, responsibilities, and rewards. That's what collaboration looks like. Another powerful thing when we talk about coalitions, often we pass on all the responsibility to our institutions, our police department, our schools. But really, if you're going to make population level change, hospitals, for instance, hospitals can treat disease, but communities produce health. Policemen and women enforce the law, but communities produce justice. Schools can teach, but communities produce fully prepared young people. If the community at large shirks its responsibilities, we overburden these systems and institutions, and we expect unattainable miracles from them. So this is why if we partner together in a coalition and collaborate, we can operate just like a magnifying glass that focuses it on uses sunlight to pinpoint and start a fire. So we use the same principles by bringing different sectors into the community. We have a lot of really engaged and partners and parents that are involved in our coalition. Another thing, there's a lot of confusion. We'll be using the term vulnerable community members tonight. Vulnerable community members, and here's the definition, but I want to really simplify that for you, and I'm going to tell you a really short story. I'm a 25-year veteran of the military, and in 2003, me and some of my key members were approached by the Health and Human Services and Substance Abuse Mental Health Administration. And what they had found is in 2003, we started getting these soldiers and airmen coming back with significant issues around mental health, substance abuse issues, and they had no treatment, no access, especially our National Guard members that didn't go back to a base. They went back to Douglas County. They went back to their communities, and they didn't have that base. They went right back to their schools. They went right back to their jobs with no support, with these serious mental health and PTSD issues. At that time, the National Guard, the military members were identified and still in many communities are considered vulnerable community members. As also in other communities, unlike ours, Native American, our Native Americans are considered vulnerable community members. Also, African American, Asian American are considered vulnerable community members. So tied with that, I just want to make sure that you understand what that means. Most recently, there's been some other areas where our youth are vulnerable communities. When youth is transitioning from elementary to middle school, big vulnerable community right there. From middle school to high school, very vulnerable community there again. If they're homeless, another high vulnerability community. So this is what that means. And then equity versus equality. This is not a pie. This is not about slicing things out and one person gets more pie than another. What we're working on, us and many of our stakeholders, is just equity and making sure that everybody has the same opportunities to be successful. So I've used this image. I hope this really helps to really set up our conversation. And lastly, I want to talk about a little bit of our Healthy Kids data. Now, I want to caution you. This is all Douglas County youth, Douglas County youth, countywide, and it was pre-COVID. So as we look at the percentage of students who felt sad and hopeless and stopped doing usual activities almost every day for 2+ consecutive weeks during the past 12 months. And as you can see, you can look over to your far right, and you about 29.5% are white, non-Hispanic. Asians, 23.1%. That number's not good. You know, that in itself is not a good number. You know, we're looking at like almost 30% of our white kids are struggling and not having good days. And then here, as we start looking at our Hispanics, 39.2%. We see our multi-race kids at 36%. And our bisexual teens, 56%, over half. And then gay and lesbian, almost half of our kids. So this is very concerning. Percentage of students who made a plan for suicide. This is the last step before they actually do it. This is scary stuff. And we look at that data, we can see that not almost 10% of our non-white Hispanic kids, our Asian kids, 8%. And then we start to see that jump up 18% for our Hispanic. Multi-race jumps up to 20%. Bisexual, we're almost at 40%. And our gay and lesbian kids, 15%. You can see the difference. And we're talking about equity. Okay. Lastly, a big piece of the coalition and what we're doing is making sure that we have more trusted adults in our community that our kids can connect with. And that kid has to find that trusted adult. And right now we don't have enough of them, whether they're in schools or in our communities. We've got to increase that. Right now, you know, we're looking at 78%. Some people may say that, hey, you know, that's not bad. Are white kids 78%? No, you know, we need all of our kids need to be able to connect with a trusted adult that they can talk to. You know, these are some things that help kids stay away from problem behavior, substance use, and address mental health concerns. As you can see that our Hispanic kids, you start to see those numbers go down. Bisexual students, 64% don't have an adult they can go to and talk to. So these are some really disturbing numbers, and we need to do something about this as a community, not just a school district. We need our churches. We need our business community. We need our Parks and Rec department. We need everybody, all hands on approach to tackle these issues. So you've probably had enough of me. Here's our contact information. You know, talking about all the great things we do as a coalition could be a presentation within itself. So I don't want to waste any more of the time. So I'm going to kick it over to Gavin. Gavin is one of our students over at Valor, and he is going to say a few words.
Hello, everybody. My name is Gavin Salchuk. I'm a student at Valor Christian High School. I'm a junior. I'm involved with the student leadership team. I do a lot of work with our VP of diversity and helping build inclusion around the school, support diversity of thought, diversity of different people. I'm also a part of the sports teams. I play football and I run track at Valor. And another student we have here with us today from Valor is my very good friend, Laura Porter.
Hi, I'm Laura Porter. I'm a junior at Valor too, and I am involved in Sources of Strength at Valor. I'm on the leadership committee for that, and I also work with the Youth Coalition with Curtis. I'm on the leadership team for that and go between that and its Youth Leader Board. And I'm also involved with STEM at Valor, working with pre-health and medical things as well. So, and then we also have Rosalind here. You're muted.
How awesome that you have a speaker that has just muted herself. Gavin, do you want to do the honors?
Yeah, so I mean, I'm new to this thing. This has definitely been a great blessing to be able to work with Douglas County Health and Youth Coalition. And one of the great people I've been able to meet is Miss Rosalind. And just over the past few days, sharing my story, hearing everything she has to say and all the work that she's done to help the community, help all this stuff. And it's been amazing. So I want to introduce Miss Rosalind. She's going to be our main speaker. She's going to go over a lot of stuff tonight. It's going to be amazing. We're going to have a lot of fun. And then me and Laura will be on the side as well to answer some questions that you guys have in the chat and some questions that she has in her presentation for you guys.
That is right. Thanks, Gavin. Thanks, Laura. And thank you to everybody that has given me your stories and has helped me prepare this evening. And if this is helpful to you all, actually, if you want to pin me, that might be helpful because I'm going to use something called Prezi to do a lot of my presentation. And so that means that it's going to look like this. So something's going to come in and it's going to be to my side. So I'm not going to have the slides around like the little head. I'm not going to share the screen. It's going to be me and the slides and me and the information coming in simultaneously. So if it's helpful to you, I would pin me and then it'll pin, you know, when Gavin speaks and when Laura speaks. So what I want to do this evening is set an intention. And, you know, we don't need to have a tragedy like you've had in your community that happens all too often of a young person taking their life to be able to do an intention setting. But it is also really important that no matter how you come here this evening, what you think, what you believe, what you hold in your heart, you know, what kind of family you have, what kind of experience you have, the purpose of being here this evening is I would like all of us to be here in intention to be able to strengthen our communities, and that we are here together as a community. I'm actually in Colorado today. That's where I live, but I'm off the street from you a little bit. But let's just sit for a moment. Put your, just sit quietly just for a moment. I bet everybody came with a million things they did today. So just sit here quietly for one moment of intention. Okay. All right. So I'm going to start off by asking Laura, and I'm going to ask Laura and Gavin 2 questions. And then I'm going to ask you the same question. So I'm giving you a heads up. What is one thing you want to come out of this evening? What is one thing? And also, why are you participating? So Laura, can you tell us, why, maybe we should do it backwards. Why are you participating? And what would you like people to get out of this evening?
I'm participating because mental health is my personal passion, and I think that this ties in very well with that. And I think there's a lot of topics that many people want to talk about, and it needs to be talked about, but they're too scared to, or they don't know the right way to approach it, or they're scared it's gonna create some kind of backlash, or someone's gonna disagree with their opinion. And I think that learning the right way or a better approach to talking about more difficult situations and problems in our community is very beneficial to people.
All right. So you sort of did both in one. Good
job,
Laura. All right. Gavin, why don't we go to you?
Yeah, so I want to be here, and I decided to be here because I want to make an impact in the community. I want to be a voice for people that are struggling, whether it's mental health, whether it's race, whether it's other forms of hate, hatred, dealing with that. So I want to be someone that people can come to. I want to be able to share my experiences and learn from others as well, and be able to be well-rounded in that, so I can learn and be able to help others when problems like that occur. What I want to learn out of from tonight, and what I want you guys to be able to get out from tonight, is that we're not all perfect, and a lot of times we might do these same things. We might struggle with feeling this way, being hated on, being victims of mental health or racism, but we also might inflict it without knowing. And I want to make sure that we understand that we're not perfect, and it's okay. It's okay to go get help. It's okay to step back and realize you were wrong in a situation. So that's really what I want to get to you guys, and what I want to get out from this
Step
talk
back
today.
and realize.
Thanks you all. And for me, what I would like is, I speak all around the world. And this morning, for example, I was speaking to a group in Mississippi. I have the incredible privilege of working with all different kinds of communities all over. And so for me, I think what I'd like to bring, or what I'd like to, why am I participating, is because I'm in your state. I moved here 9 years ago, and I was, it was really a privilege to be able to do that and put roots down, be able to, raise my own children and my own family here. And I also think that, hopefully, in a way, there are people who have very different opinions about things who are here with us. Because my hope is, what I'd like to get out is just a little bit of people who might have really passionate disagreement about things, for them to be able to have a little bit more tools to be able to talk to each other, or even think it's a possibility. Because what I'm hearing from young people way too much is that they believe that adults just can't talk to each other. And that is frankly unacceptable. I mean, this African proverb of "it takes a village to raise a child" is true. But it's also a cliche in some ways, because we say it like it's like this assumption that we all agree about everything and we all get along. And the village is really complicated, and it's really messy, even under the best of times. And the problem is if we don't acknowledge the messiness of it and the complexities of it, then the people that really get hurt by it are our kids, because the adults can't be the people that they need them to be. And so for me, what I'd love for you to get out of it is one little thing of like, how do I talk to somebody who disagrees with me about these things? Or how do I speak? How do I do this? How do I really able to work in my village to strengthen the connections and the bonds that we have, so that ultimately we can help young people in ways where we can be very credible to them. We don't have to be perfect, like Gavin said, And we make a mess of the conversations that we have, like Laura said, except we do them. And we really put the hard work in and the courage in to be able to do the work. So what I want to do first is, let's see, right, is, oh my gosh, excuse me. So, oh no, we're doing this on YouTube, so I can't ask you. Never mind. All right, sorry about asking you to do something you can't do, which is I was going to ask you to put something in the chat. So excuse me for that. All right, so I'm going to start with what I think are so incredibly important for any kind of conversation, but especially about ones with hard conversations, when you're having hard conversations. And that is about principles. So principles are things that guide our thoughts and our actions. So values are our why, and principles are the how. And so here are the ones that I want you to consider for our being together today. Everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. Everyone deserves to be treated with worth. I have to put this bigger because I cannot read it. Okay, activating curiosity, especially when we're uncomfortable, is the key to learning. And so there is no way for us to figure out how to strengthen our village if we don't get really uncomfortable. No one knows everything. Together we know a lot. So this is a principle that I want you to think about drives our thinking and our action. So I've worked with young people for a very long time, like over 2 decades. I know a lot about how to have conversations, which, by the way, does not make it easier for me in some ways, where it doesn't make it easy for me to do them. You know, I practice, but it's still hard. So I bring a lot of expertise, but so do you. And so does your life experience, no matter what that experience is. So no one that knows everything, but together we can do a lot. We know a lot. Be easy on people, hard on ideas. Okay, so this might be the most important thing that I say to you this whole night. So we are in a country that's having some serious, significant challenges. And I'm gonna tell you, this will be the last time I tell you, I work in all different kinds of political spectrums of communities, the most conservative to the most liberal, or what they think is the most conservative and what they think is the most liberal. And things are usually a lot more nuanced than that. But what happens in our country is that we are so hard on people. And when we're hard on people, it makes us be so distracted from our focus on them and assuming that they have bad intention or that they're incompetent, that it stops us from being actually able to focus on the ideas that we need to be able to figure out and work together on for the benefit of our children and the benefit of our communities. So I'm asking us to switch the script, the culture script of, instead of being hard on people and easy on ideas, I'm asking us to be easy on people and hard on ideas. Young people are the subject matter experts of their lives. This is a principle I want you to think about, because one of the things that we're going to talk about this evening is that, and comes from best of intentions, but when we need to recognize that we don't know what it's like to be young today. And in fact, actually adults really don't ever know what it's like to be growing up at a particular time. That doesn't mean we don't have similarities. It doesn't mean we don't have things to offer. It just means, and this year would have been, if there was ever a good example of it, is we have never been on the receiving end of virtual learning in a pandemic. I was an educator throughout this school year, and I don't know what it's like to be on the receiving end of that kind of education. Our young people do. Our young people also grew up with no privacy, not just because of technology giants and stuff like that, but accessing our information. But it's also about parents who take pictures of their kids from the time they were literally born and posting it on social media. So we grew up with privacy. Our children didn't. We really, really do not know what it's like to be growing up today. So we have to recognize that they are the subject matter experts of their lives, and then we can give them advice. So another one that I want us to think about is listening is being prepared to be changed by what you hear. So listening is one of those words that drives me crazy when people do speeches like this, where we talk about we really need to listen to each other. What in the world does that mean? Listening is incredibly complicated. So I'm asking you to think about it as being prepared to be changed by what you hear, which does not mean you have to agree. It means that you have to go into, if you are listening, it's not listening to see like, when is the person making a mistake, or listening so when you can respond. It is listening to be prepared to be changed by what you hear. And then our second to last one is validate, don't relate, which is incredibly important in the conversations we're going to have this evening. And then the last one is, and I think Gavin mentioned this, is asking for help is a strength, not a weakness. So I want to give a very concrete, this is my first concrete suggestion for you all, which is that, I've worked in schools for a long time. I've worked in schools that look wonderful on the cover of it and are not great on the insides. I've worked with wonderful teachers and administrators, and I've worked with people that have not been so great. I've worked with wonderful coaches. I've worked with not such wonderful coaches. So I understand the mess of what schools can be. And so here's one of our first ones that we all across the board, schools really don't do a very good job of in general, which is that they say, if you're having a problem, if somebody's being cruel to you, if you're experiencing racism, homophobia, bullying, whatever it is, go tell a trusted adult. That is the de facto line that we say in education. That is a soundbite. Soundbites don't work. Soundbites never work, but they certainly don't work in schools and with cynical young people who are very savvy about what messages they're getting from adults and what are credible and what are not. So go tell a trusted adult is pretty much nothing. What it can be, if we actually take it away from the soundbite and we say asking for help, like Gavin said in his introduction of we're not perfect, we've got to be able to reach out, is asking for help as a strength and a capacity. We have to reframe this as a principle so that asking for help is a capacity and a skill. And so one of the things I would strongly, strongly ask you to do in any capacity that you have working with young people, having young people in your life, is that at any age appropriate, right, the words you're going to use, is ask them, what are the 3 things, characteristics that they need in an adult so they would trust them to go talk to them if they had a problem. So what are the 3 characteristics of an adult that they need that they would say, okay, this is a person that I can go to. And of course, as kids get older, they might want to go to somebody not their parents, which is totally developmentally appropriate. And our village should really be able to accommodate that children will go to a trusted adult that's not their parent as a real strengthener for the village. So it's really important that we reconsider this as a capacity and a skill. This is what creates things like resilience, when we are able to go to adults and think about it in a skill-based way. And then once we get the criteria, then you can think about who is the person who fits in your list of your criteria. So you create the criteria, then you come up with the person. If you're a parent listening to this, I would strongly ask you to think about, especially if you've got kids like 7th grade and up, is you can sit at the table and you both separately can come up with a list of what the characteristics are. And then once you come up with a list, you can compare and contrast, but remember, listening is being prepared to be changed by what you hear, because you might find some, interesting information from your child because they see the world differently. And those kinds of conversations are incredibly important as well. So life is messy. Your children are going to, most likely, you're going to have experiences where people are going to try and take the dignity away of them or someone else. And asking for help in this way can really be a lifesaver. So these are the principles that we're going to operate on that I'm asking you to think about this evening. And then I just gave you what I hope is a concrete takeaway to be able to use with your students or the young people in your care in any capacity. So let's see what time, Gavin, Laura, is there anything that you want to add to anything before I go on? Are we good?
I'm good. I don't have anything.
Okay.
Good.
Good. Okay. All right. They're definitely, they've got also things that they've to say, but I'm going to them, right? Because they are the experts of your community more than I am. All right. Now what I want you to do is I want you to think of, I'd like for you to close your eyes. And I'd like for you don't have to close your eyes. And I can't check if you're closing your eyes, but I want you to think about who was an adult that you respected when you were growing up. Like when you were Laura's age and you were Gavin's age, they're juniors, or, with the age of your children's age. So the age of your children. So who's an adult that you respected when you were growing up? And just think about that person, visualize them. All right, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to separate the words respect and dignity for us because it's so extraordinarily important in terms of strengthening the village and being able to be credible to young people. So here's what we need to get really clear, and I'm going to move my chair so I'm in the middle, so that we need to know what the word respect actually means, because it gets co-opted and used in our communities and in our culture in really dysfunctional ways. So not helpful ways. So respect in Latin means it means respectus. It means to look back at. Spectacles, like glasses, are coming from the same root word. So respect is earned, and it is earned by somebody behaving. They've gotten their position of respect by what they've achieved, but also how they have achieved that position. So when we talk about respecting our elders, which is of course how I grew up and how many of us grew up, it is actually it's a very complex thing that we don't talk about, which is there's an assumption that the person that we're respecting has not only gotten that position because of an achievement, but because of how they have achieved it. So now I want you to think of the person I asked you, like, who was it that you respected when you were growing up? And, if you say my teacher or my parents or my grandparents or a coach, that's not unusual. It makes perfect sense. But maybe the reason that you respected them was not necessarily because of their position, but because of the way they treated you and other people in that position. And the way that they were treating you and maybe other people is they were treating you with dignity. They acknowledged you, they saw you. Maybe they were really hard on you, but they were equitable about the way that they were hard on people. They pushed you, they saw that you had potential, they held you responsible, they held you accountable, but they saw you as a person. They treated you with dignity, with inherent worth. And those are the people that young people will do anything for. Now, the problem is, excuse me, I got ahead of myself, is so that dignity means in Latin to be worthy, and dignity is a given. And dignity, the inherent worth of a human being, is so extraordinarily important to recognize. And it is missing in our culture, or it is said, as even sometimes now sort of in a derogatory way, or in a way of not understanding the true meaning of this word. And sometimes respect and dignity get conflated to mean the same thing, and they really do not. And so here's the other thing that's very hard about the word respect. Respect is often used as a way for people in positions of power to get away with degrading other people. It's a way of taking advantage of the authority they have because of their position to get away with not treating people well, with trying or stripping people of their dignity. And then we don't speak out about it because we don't want to be disrespectful, because we've been trained not to be disrespectful to people in positions of authority. And so one of the things that's really powerful, especially to say to young people, because oftentimes respect can be used by an adult to say to a young person, especially, by the way, disenfranchised young people or children of color, that it is used as a way to demand compliance and obedience. So with children with less financial resources, children of color, it is really something that we see, that word respect is a way to actually say, you must obey me, you must comply. And if you don't like it, I'm going to say that you're being defiant and disrespectful, and then that will allow me to justify punishing you in a way that shows that I have more power than you do. This is a really powerful cultural lesson that young people learn, and it is incredibly important that we acknowledge it, because if we don't, all of these like character building programs or values-based things, and they're usually mostly well-intentioned, kindness campaigns, things like that, well-intentioned. If we don't talk about the mess of these two words and we don't get very clear on the meaning of these words, young people, for the most part, will not buy what we are selling because they see so much hypocrisy, not just in the world of social media, but also, frankly, I've had two kids. One kid is playing basketball at college. I went to all around your area to basketball tournaments and all that stuff. And we don't need to look farther than, for example, the tournaments that our children are playing in sports to see adults who are abusing power in all different kinds of ways. And so it's not just, of course, obviously in youth sports, but it's something that in our state we do quite a bit. And there are wonderful people in these worlds of young people's sports, but we have to also acknowledge that if you are in competitive sports with your children, I cannot imagine that you have not seen a parent or a coach or somebody in those environments abusing their power, and young people not being able to say anything about it. So these are powerful words that mean a lot in our communities. And if we want to have honest conversations with our kids, we're going to have to acknowledge the mess of it. So this can be really contrary to how we were raised. So if it's uncomfortable for you, all I'm asking is for you to engage in it, is for you to engage in the thought. Ask your young people about this, that are in your life. And there's so much written about dignity that I really encourage you to think about that, because here's my last, just not my plug, but my last thought about it is that this stuff is so powerful that when young people are experiencing abusive power from a peer who has more power or from an adult, if they think that person has more power, they're not going to come forward to talk about what's happening to them because they believe that they won't be listened to. And so if we can say to them, your dignity can never be taken away, please come talk to us. You can talk to us. It's just much more likely that they will. And so with that was a lot to talk about and a lot that I'm talking at you. And so I just want to give Laura or Gavin an opportunity to comment, disagree, agree, whatever you feel that you'd like to say about what I just said. Here's an opportunity for you to do so.
I think it is very prevalent with teachers and how you're taught you have to respect every single one of your teachers. And I think, like I say, there's some people that I've lost my respect, but saying this, it's not that they've lost my respect, it's that they never gained my respect. They never did anything for me to be able to say, yes, I trust you, I respect you, I look up to the things in your actions that you do. But that doesn't mean I'm not going to treat them kindly and acknowledge like their dignity and everything. But people just think that when you meet someone, you respect them until they do something that doesn't deserve your respect anymore. But it's the opposite. In order to get your respect in the first place, they have to earn it. And a lot of adults do not realize that. I think a lot of like friends, parents, and stuff like that, and teachers especially is my main one.
Yeah, I'd say the mentors, the teachers, the most important people in my life have given me the same respect, the same type of dignity, and showed me that I'm worthy to them. That they don't see themselves as having a position of power over me. They don't see me as someone that they can control and they can tell what to do. I think that's the most important thing when it comes to youth struggling with different issues. When we feel like we don't have a position of power, we don't have a real voice in our word. We're saying stuff, but it doesn't mean anything. We're not going to get anywhere with what we're saying because we always have somebody that has a position of power over someone that their word is worth more than our word. We don't share what we have. We don't share the issues we have. And when we establish that relationship, well, both individuals are given dignity. Both individuals are shown to have an equal amount of power, that they both matter to each other and not one is greater than the other. Then we get a lot further in what we want to share, what we want to say. The youth is able to express themselves, and you guys as parents, as whoever, are able to soak all that in, and then you can help us from there. A lot of our experiences, like Ms. Rosalind was saying, are not the same as what you guys have experienced. So it's a little different than what you guys have gone through, but you guys still are able to help. And without that establishment of showing both individuals dignity, it's a lot harder for the youth to open up, or certain people to open up and be able to share their experiences. So that's what I have to say about that.
Yeah, thanks.
I also have one more thing.
Yes, Laura, go ahead.
I also think that the way you respect your child has a lot to say about how they respect you, because I have the most respect in the world for my mother, and she's like the person I look up to in everything. But I see friends and I see peers that that's not the case and it's the opposite. And I've had friends say, like, I don't respect my parents anymore. They do certain things just to have this sense of control over me. And so it can go both ways. Like, parents can be, like, I think, like, my mother, she respects me. I have so much respect for her. And I think that if you just like take a minute and reflect on the way you could treat your child, that it could be amazing and they could look up to you. But there's a lot of people where that's just not the case. And it's just something to think about.
Yeah, thanks. And I want to say pretty clearly, as the mother of two enormous children, two big boys, and as a teacher for a long time, I want my children to respect me as their mother, and I want my students to respect me as their teacher. And that is based on the fact that I am working to be an ethical authority figure for them. So I'm all about authority. I want it to be ethically earned. And so I want to be clear with parents who are like, wait, are they telling me like I can't have an authority? Absolutely you can. And so what we're asking is to go back to those principles. And Gavin said something really important I just want to highlight, which is that when you see your child, dignity is a lot about acknowledging the reality of your child or what they're going through. When you do that, they are much more likely to come talk to you about the problems they're having. If they are scared about your reaction to something because of the power imbalance, and that's the case with teachers as well, is that they're not going to come forward. And we know that we have to have young people be able to trust us enough to come forward because their lives have gotten so complex. And we are seeing the fallout with mental health, depression and anxiety and suicide, all of these things, and loneliness and isolation. We are dealing with this. And like Curtis said, before the pandemic, we were dealing with this. So it is actually being able to have a relationship with your child where they are respecting you, as Laura said, for the actions that you do. So, what we're going to do now is we're going to transition. These are our foundations.
Rosalind, we just got a question.
Oh, we did. Oh, thanks. Okay. Go ahead. What's the question?
It's what percentage of teachers have earned your respect? And it's asking me and Gavin.
Oh boy.
No.
God, do you want to do like a thing of your...
I'm trying to think through all my teachers.
Yeah, I've kind of been thinking about it while Ms. Rosalind was speaking. I mean, at Valor, I've been blessed with some great teachers. I know in the past, there's been some teachers that I've lost respect for, never really fully got my respect. But it's not necessarily the fact that they haven't earned my respect or I haven't earned their respect. It's more of what I see is more of the dignity piece. I respect my teachers for the most part. I respect them because, I mean, doing that job is hard. It's a hard thing standing up there. They got to teach students, and students, not all students are behaving well. They some goof around, some don't do their homework, and it's a hard job. So I respect what they're doing, and I understand that it's hard. I think the dignity piece is where it really comes in, and if they're seeing you as an equal person, I know they still have a little bit more power because they're a teacher, but are they using that against you? Are they not seeing it from your perspective, or not taking a step out of their shoes and realizing that, oh, this student's actually struggling with something? I mean, there's countless times where I've had friends that, oh, I've had family issues, and then now school's piling up on them and they don't feel like they can go to their teachers and ask for some extensions or some leeway with homework assignments and tests. And it's just a big deal, and they're stressed with that. And it makes the situation worse when a teacher doesn't see that and doesn't say, well, I understand that you're struggling. You can have some time, take some time to deal with this with your family, and we'll talk about it when you get set up and everything like that. So that's a bigger piece for me. I'll let Laura speak on that a little bit.
I think I respect, like Gavin said, most of my teachers. I'd say it's like 1 or 2 a year, maybe out of my like 10 teachers who I don't. And a lot of people don't realize, like, even a small thing a teacher does, like making a small conversation with me, or like I have a teacher who compliments my outfits all the time, and she's like such a kind person, and you feel people's energies when they walk into the classroom. I can feel the kind of energy someone has, and if they're like uplifting, and if they're like it all really comes down to kindness and the way people treat you, and most teachers do a great job of that. And like I see them in the hallway and I wave, and it's really nice to have teachers like that. But on the other hand, there's just some that aren't, that they can, I mean, some teachers can get too involved and it becomes an issue. And there's other times when like I see my teacher in the class and I don't speak the whole class and I walk out, and they haven't done anything wrong. They haven't done anything like great, but I mean, that's not where I lose respect. Where I lose respect is when I see like their temper, like they lose their temper at someone, and like I've just seen people be not, like teachers be not kind to students. And I think that a big part of their job is to help students in high school like move through, not only learn about school, but learn how to go through life and how to deal with things. And I think
Yeah, so wait, let's be clear also, because I don't think, and then we need to move on a little bit, is that we're not saying that, it's like we have to always have to have nice teachers all the time. Standards are really important, and being able to teach to the child and be able to get them to learn and want to learn is incredibly important. And so seeing young people is just what dignity is about. And so let's move on. I want to just make sure that we get to some of the things that about like the difficult conversations that we can sometimes get into. And so, oops, sorry, here we go. So there we go. All right, so we're pivoting a little bit to like, how do we have hard conversations? When we have these principles of dignity and respect and being easy on people, hardening ideas, listening is being prepared to be changed by what we hear. There's two questions. And again, like, I don't really care where you come from on positions or arguments or anything. I'm actually pretty agnostic about like the dynamics of how people get into hard conversations and how they run off the rails are actually pretty similar no matter what we're talking about. So one of the most important things that we can do is to know the difference between a curious question and a non-curious question. So a curious question acknowledges someone's perspective and experiences. So you genuinely are asking a question because you want to know. A non-curious question hides behind the question to try to dismiss the perspective of, and the experiences of the other person. And it feels like you're trying to take away the dignity of the other person. So it's sarcastic, it's difficult, it's that thing of like, when you're talking to the person, they're trying to look for the mistake that you're going to make in your argument to then dismiss everything that you said after that. So we really need to be able to level set on what's a curious question and what's a non-curious question. When we have difficult conversations, there should be an agreement about we are going to ask curious questions. And if you feel like you're getting the other one, then you get to name it and say, like, are you really asking me this question because you want to know? Or are you asking me this question because you want me to feel stupid? Or you want my argument to be like, you want to, communicate that you think my argument is weak. I think we need to call it, right? It doesn't, and this is treating someone with dignity. It's not being rude. It's just calling what it is, because otherwise it means that the conversations are running off the rails. So I'm going to say it again, like if you think that you're getting a non-curious question, I think you can say, I don't really think you're actually asking me this question because you want to know the answer. I think you might be asking me this because you want to communicate that you don't think my argument has any merit, whatever the words are. And you can say that. And if they answer the question based on their answer, I would either continue the conversation or say, you know what, I don't think this is going, I want to be able to talk to you about this, but it seems like we can't right now. So talk to me when you're ready, because I really do want to talk to you about this. I want to continue. Hard conversations are really about inviting somebody in. And people need to feel like they're invited, but also if you feel like it's not a good place for you to be or there's no good in having it, you can take a pause. Doesn't mean you stop forever, but you can take a pause and say, when you're ready, you want to talk, I'm super right here. So being able to distinguish between the two is really important. Now, I also want to show you like what are the signs that things are going off the rails, because I want you all, you know, if you really disagree with your neighbors, if you're on a cul-de-sac and like this person over here has said some snarky things and you're like, oh gosh, why did I live on this cul-de-sac? Like, why couldn't I have lived in the cul-de-sac over that way? Over that other cul-de-sac had similar issues, I'm sure. So it's really important to be able to say, all right, what are the signs that things are going off track? So it is committed. So the things that you know is that they're committed to prove the other side has bad or foolish intentions or facts, right? So that you can feel the commitment from the person. They're listening to be able to prove that you're wrong. The next thing is that people are only listening to catch mistakes. So they're listening for like, oh, I know that's wrong because I have a fact that's way better than your fact. Someone feels judged or mocked on either side. I don't care what the issue is. If you feel judged or mocked, or if anybody does, then things are going off the rails. The conversation is going in circles. So I don't even know why we're having these conversations if they're just going like this. Someone feels like they have won the argument. Okay, so this is basically all cable TV. Again, I don't care what it is. And all it is showing that somebody is like dominating a conversation. That whole thing about dominating the conversation is destroying our communities. And that means that we destroy our communities, we are impacting the health, mental and physical health of our young people. So I am literally begging you that no matter where you stand on whatever issue, we have got to stop thinking that winning the argument means that we are somehow better, because the people that lose are our kids. So, and also being able to be in community in a way that feels good. We came to this state, or we are living in this state because it's so beautiful and because the communities can be so wonderful. And yet what I'm hearing from communities all over Colorado is we can't talk to each other anymore. And if that is the case, then what we are doing is we are listening to the people on our social media, be our role models, to not be able to talk to each other civilly. And I cannot tolerate that. We are way better than that. We are way stronger than that. We are way smarter than that. We cannot have this stuff that's above us control the way that we are having our relationships with people, especially if we vehemently disagree with them. So these are the signs that things are going off track. And I really hope you think about those in the next time, you know, you're in a difficult meeting with somebody, regardless of who it is and where it is. And so what are the things that things are on track? So that the signs that things are on track, both sides can feel like they're getting to know the other person better. You're like, oh, I did not realize that. Very interesting. Share their feelings as well as their beliefs. They can ask curious questions and listening is happening. And you can learn and acknowledge something from each other. Can you imagine, right? Of like, you can acknowledge, like, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that. Or you're teaching me to look, you know, what you're telling me, I'm thinking about things in a different way, or I'm curious about something. We don't give up our values and the way in our core beliefs when we can say to somebody, I need to think about what you've told me. That is not giving up your beliefs, unless your belief is, I will not listen to anybody and any information anyone ever gives me. And we can disagree even intensely, but still feel the other person acknowledges their dignity, that you still feel seen. So these are the signs that you are on track. And, you know, I was asked a question, so I'm going to do this now, and I'll ask Laura and Gavin, like, what you think about this. That you know, we were asked in preparation for this presentation from a parent who was worried about the districts and about how race education is happening around the country. And in this person's email, it was like, I'm very opposed to racism, and yet I am concerned about, I'm paraphrasing, about what I'm hearing about how schools are teaching about racism or race history and those kinds of things. And she had a friend who in another state had an 11-year-old son who came home and was really upset, like crying because of what he heard at school along these issues. And so I really want us, now that I've just gone through this with you, of signs things are on track, signs things are off track, curious question, non-curious question, I want to apply this situation to the things that I've just said. So first of all, I think that we don't know how the school communicated to parents about this kind of education. The other thing that's really important that you have to know if you're not a teacher or educator is that schools are getting so skittish in every single way about these kinds of issues that it's making them actually, in some ways, it makes it really hard for them to have their, like literally their prefrontal cortex, the executive functioning of their brain, be able to do the best job possible because they're being emotionally hijacked by the amount of anger and anxiety that's coming at them from parents on both sides. And so we're not setting up our administrators to do their best work because they are actually human beings who have brains who respond just like we all do when they are under attack. You fight, you flee, you freeze. It's really hard to do this. So I want us to have some sympathy for the administrators who are in these situations. Second is I really want to, I lost my train of thought about what, oh goodness gracious. Okay, I'll just keep going. Is that I want, let's see. Oh yeah, it is okay for young people to be sad about tragedies like slavery. It is okay for that. It is okay for them to be sad about that. It is okay. Our young people by the age of 11 are seeing things on social media that are violent, hypersexualized, that are tragedies in so many ways about our culture literally by the age actually of this child of 11. And so our children cannot be desensitized to the tragedies that have happened in our history and the tragedies that are happening right now. What they need is for adults to help them process what it's like to be in this culture today. And actually that's what I remembered that I forgot, which is that young people are going to have the strongest, traditionally we set it up this way, they're going to have the strongest relationships with these trusted adults, with people in their home and people at their schools. And yet what's happening is that teachers and parents are not trusting each other enough. And sometimes are questioning their intent or questioning their competence. And so what happens is the people that are supposed to be the ones that are the closest to the child to take care of the child don't trust each other. When that happens, you let the rest of the world impact the relationships that you have that are the most direct relationship with your child. Again, your child suffers. And so when a child comes home that's sad about something that they learned in school, the first thing that I would do as an adult, as the parent, is to process that with them, to say, I am so sorry that happened. I'm so sorry you're sad. Please tell me more about this so I understand where you're getting their bad feelings out of their stomach and putting it to words. That means they're becoming more emotionally granular. The more emotionally granular you are, your anxiety goes down. That is science. Your anxiety goes down, the more you're able to describe what's happening to you. And then you're able to figure out, well, what happened? And so the question that I would ask, because again, I said a few minutes ago, I've dealt with incompetent schools. I've dealt with parent. So, and I've dealt with it on the other side as well. So the question is, and the question I would ask this parent is do you think it was possible that the person who's giving you this information, this is a curious question, were they able to ask curious questions to the school, to the teacher? Or are they asking non-curious questions? Or if you're worried about this as a parent, are you able to ask curious questions? I want to know more. And the way that you're communicating to the school is that you are genuinely curious, and that your bedrock principle that you share with the school is the dignity and worth of every child in that school and of every child everywhere. And so when we come from that perspective, we can feel it. Like actually Laura's talked about feeling this when a teacher walks into a room. But if you're asking non-curious questions in your tone and in your approach, people know, and they get their back up and they get defensive and they start putting up walls. And then you think that they're hiding something. So all of these non-curious, curious questions are so important to be able to pull apart and say, well, what are we really dealing with here? And as an adult, your responsibility is to say to yourself, oh, I asked a non-curious question. I came in there assuming the worst, and they totally picked up on that. And that's why they got defensive. That is our responsibility as an adult, is to say, oh yeah, I contributed to this problem in this way. Maybe I go back to school and say, hey, the way I came at you the other day, or it might, yeah, I actually can see what I did there, and I'm really sorry. And I'm really curious about this program. Can we set up a time? And so that is how we repair communities. That's how we see the dignity of everyone in the community. And that's how you empower your administrators to do their best job possible and your teachers the best job possible. So, so that's my, that's my answer for that question, because I think it uses curious and non-curious questions well. I want to turn to Gavin or to Laura. Is there anything that you'd like to add to that about curious questions or about hearing that concern from the parent?
Yeah, definitely one thing that first comes to mind is, I mean, just a little activity we do in school, and we'll have debates. We'll go back and forth, and we'll talk about subjects that we learn, whether it's reading from a book, whether we discussed in class. We'll talk about subjects, and the whole key to the debate is to get to a deeper meaning. And if you're asking non-curious questions, if you're not really trying to understand the reason why somebody believes what they believe, do what they do, think what they think, then you're going to get nowhere. By asking curious questions, you really deepen that meaning and you understand where they're coming from. And another thing that I think of is diversity of thought. It's not just diversity is a variety of things. So it can be a variety of whether it's skin color or it's thought, gender. It's a variety. So variety of thought is a great way to think about it when you're faced with these questions. Nobody's wrong. If you believe something, if you think something, there's nothing wrong with that. You're allowed to disagree. You're allowed to have different perspectives on different views. But I want to be able to understand where the other person's coming from. I want to be able to see it how they see it, and maybe that's a better way than I think my way is, and maybe it's not. But being able to understand that and hopefully getting them to understand the way you think as well, without having to ask non-curious questions and having to try and focus them on a certain idea or force them to believe in something is a more efficient way to solve that. I think of, the world of politics right now. I mean, it's so divided, and it seems like just asking questions and thinking about stuff like that, it seems to always bring on an argument or a fight or some kind of confrontation. But by trying to understand in a deeper level, trying to understand why they approach the situation like that, why they think like that, it's a lot. You'll get to a better meaning, a better understanding, and it leaves both people not hating each other, not trying to get each other's throats and all that stuff, but it gives more of each other a sense of respect, because now you understand why they think that, and you understand they understand why you think that, and you guys are okay to disagree. There's nothing wrong with disagreeing. A part of who we are as people. I mean, we're social beings. Communication is both agreeing and disagreeing. So it's okay for that. So by asking those curious questions, you're able to get to deeper meanings and understand the real reason why people think what they do what they do, and you're able also to express why you do what you do, why you think what you do, without having to hate on somebody else or make them feel worse about themselves or try and alter the way they believe. So
yeah, the one thing before Laura, I go to you, is the one thing that I would say is if somebody is speaking about another person or a group of people in a way that is denying their dignity, then that to me is a place where disagreement needs to be clear about, like, what, if I'm hearing from somebody and I hear what they're saying, like, oh, it doesn't matter that I say X about, like, I hear it all the time from other people, or what, whatever that is. If they're what they're saying is taking away the dignity of other people, then I want to name that and say, here's what's really hard for me right now about what you're saying. It is coming across as if you are not acknowledging the worth of that group of people, or that they are less worthy than others, just inherently, that they just are. And that I have to really disagree with. And that's like the bedrock, right? Of like it, and that means you still treat, as Laura said earlier, you still treat that person with dignity. But I feel comfortable with this, to being able to say, but I'm not going to respect the actions of somebody who is saying that these people over here, because of the way they are and the way they were born, or the way that they just, where they come from or anything, that they deserve any less worth than anybody else. And I think that's where we, that's where where we can get to a place where things get really, really rough. And so, Laura, I want to speak to you and then get your opinion. And then also, if you all want to, that are watching this on YouTube, if you want to hit us up with any thoughts, concerns, disagreements, agreements, please do so. So, Laura, what did you want to add?
Gavin was talking about the debates we do at Valor. And one of me and Gavin's favorite things to do at lunch with our friends is debate topics. And a lot of times that's politics, and a lot of times that's whatever English book we're reading.
That's awesome.
And we do it all the time. And we're guilty of asking non-curious questions too. It's not just adults, it's us too. We get into spirals and it goes downhill after a certain point, especially when me and Gavin disagree. We always kind of go against each other. But it's kids too that ask these questions, and I think everyone needs to be aware of it. So not only as parents thinking of how you can ask curious questions, but also if you hear your child saying something that's not, you can also tell them, because it's the role of everybody to respect people or treat them with dignity.
Nice job, Laura. Nice.
And
very nice.
It's not just adults. Children need to do the exact same thing. Be a person. Like, I have to earn people's respects the same way. So I think that. And do you want me to do the I have an example or
well, let's go to, we've got one, hold that thought, Laura, because we've got I want to go to the people that are watching. So we got a question of when a child is in disagreement with another child or an adult, where they have opposing views, how can they handle that? So here's the thing. I think it's really important to have default that are authentic, but default responses when you are really in disagreement. So my default responses, especially when I get heated, and I can get heated, you can imagine, like, I spend my entire life working on issues of discrimination, dehumanization, upholding dignity. These are things, that I'm like thinking about a lot. So I have a lot of passion. I tend to have strong opinions about things, which does not mean I'm right all the time. It just means I have strong opinions. So I need some default responses to calm myself down. And so the ones that I use, and you can use them if you find it helpful, is to say, help me understand. When I hear something, I'm like, oh no, you did not just say that. My response in my head is, okay, I'm going to say, help me understand. And I actually have it now so that it's when I hear myself say it, it's actually sort of a trigger for me of like, oh, I'm really upset about this. It's like this thing that I practice. And so you say, help me understand. And then you repeat back, what was the thing that was that you disagree with so much? So help me understand why you think, like, for example, I've talked to a number of white kids in Colorado who say, I don't get why can't I say that word, right? That can get me really, really heated. So help me understand, or how did you get to a place where you think that that's an okay thing to do? And notice that I don't have like a self-righteous tone about it or a sarcastic tone, because a lot of this is about tone. So like, help me understand, how you got to this place, because everybody has a place. They all have a journey of how you got to this place. And if you can understand that journey, it doesn't excuse behavior. It doesn't, it doesn't if it's taking away somebody's dignity, but we want to understand how you got there. And so help me understand is a really important default when you're in disagreement. And it tends to calm your brain down. And then the other thing that's really helpful is when somebody is doubling down on something that's, problematic, is for you to say, okay, so this is really important. Obviously, this is really important to you. I'd really like to understand why. Will you explain it to me? And then listen, right? Listen. It doesn't mean you have to agree. It means you're prepared to be changed by what you hear. And it can be all different kinds of changes. And then once that person is done, then you can say, okay, thanks for telling me. And I'd like to be able to share with you how I feel. Can you do that right now? Because you're inviting somebody into the conversation, and they're literally consenting to the conversation. So if they say, yes, I do want to continue. Yes, I want to hear you. Then you're in a different dynamic than trying to prove that each other is right or wrong. And if the person is like not listening, then again, we can go back to, all right, look, I don't think you're listening to me, which is fine. I just don't, it's like, this is a waste of both of our time. So if you want to hit me back like later, tomorrow, whatever, I don't care. I'd love to talk to you about this. So, so those 2 sentence scripts are help me understand, and this is clearly really important to you. I'd like to understand why. All right, let's see. Okay. All right, so you see, I mean, I'll say it. So there's a comment for both of you. You're both wonderfully eloquent. I appreciate your honesty, your poise, your willingness to be present on a Wednesday evening. They probably have a lot of other things to do and to come forward, right? To be like, I'm going to talk about this, which is amazing. All right, Laura, I don't think I gave you your time. You had a comment that we need to go to.
Oh, yeah, I was gonna have example of curious question.
Mhm.
And so this is kind of an example where the person asking the question is trying to like learn more about someone's mental illness or something. And so a curious question would be asking like, what are some things that you have gone through or experienced through and whatever it is, or how has this affected you? And like how, and if it's like once you've like kind of not moved on, but gotten better, maybe not 100%, you could say like, what are some of the things that helped you? But non-curious questions would be like, did you have to go to therapy? Or why, like if you, a lot of people, especially with like bipolar disorder, they do things that, I mean, they don't, like they regret later, and people can ask them like, why would you do that? And like, that can make them feel even worse about it. So I think just like, or how did you get that? Why are you so sad all the time? That one especially, I think that just trying to think that it's a very hard issue and making someone feel worse about an illness that all it does is make them feel worse every day is just piling on to it. So just like being cautious of wording, I think, especially with sensitive topics like that, can be very.
That's great, Laura, that's great. Like those differentiations are incredibly important, incredibly important. Thank you for that. That's helpful to me. Like I learned that's really helpful to me. So let's see, is there any other questions that I got? Okay, got it. All right, so I want to do the last thing that, not the like thing that I want to show you is, so, oh no, it's not one, it's like, it's not exactly the last thing. Is that this word ally is getting like a bad reputation or something, or people are like not taking it seriously, and which is such a bummer because, you know, these words that are so important get diminished. And the question, again, curious question is, well, why? Right? Like, why is the word ally is like losing the strength of its word? Or why is woke being so diminished or so ridiculed now? The definition of woke really comes, the origins of it, excuse me, as far as my understanding of it goes, is from a folk song from a Black folk singer in the 1840s that was singing about having to be vigilant as a Black person, and that your physical safety was at risk. And so the stanzas in the folk song are about constantly being awake. And so it's such a sad state of affairs that we go from a folk song that's really speaking to the experiences of Black Americans in the 1800s to using it as a word to diminish and to ridicule, you know, being aware of or trying to be aware of racial injustices or inequities. So, I mean, I just to be aware of words and the history of words is really important. And that we've got to be, I'm asking all of us, again, regardless of where we come from or, you know, what we believe, that that words get power for reasons, or they get diminished for reasons. And so it's time for us to really step in and say, why? And get really curious about that, so that we're in charge of our own thinking, so that we're thoughtful about our own thinking. Because it's too easy. It's too easy with social media and the feeds, right? That all of these social media platforms are doing is all they want to do is hold our attention. They don't care what politics in some ways that we have, like, or they don't care about selling us shoes versus selling us a political viewpoint. They just want to hold our attention. That is the commodity. And so for us to be able to be thoughtful about that, mindful about that, so that when these words trickle through our culture, that we have some understanding of how that works. So the ally definition is being more than being sympathetic towards those who experience discrimination. It is more than simply believing in equality. And being an ally means being willing to act with and for others in pursuit of ending oppression and creating equality. So in other words, an ally is a verb. And Gavin, do you remember what you said to me? I think it was yesterday in preparation for this. Do you remember that? Can you say it? Because I wrote it down, but it's your word and I'm not going to steal it right now. I told you I'd steal it later.
Yeah, I said ally is not a name tag. It's not something that you get to wear, you get to put on, and it's you. But it's more of an idea. It's a concept. It's something. It's a way of life. Something that you got to live out. That's kind of how I described it.
Yeah, and it can be on race issues. It can be on any kind of discrimination issues, or somebody not being treated with dignity. It is, you are an ally to speak. It is a journey. It is a commitment to living a life of, I'm going to uphold the dignity of myself and of others. And it's not about these enormous gestures either. I think sometimes, it's like life is not an after school special. It is the smallest things that you can do to be an ally. It is being able not to be a savior or a hero, but to bear witness, to the injustice that is happening where people are being dehumanized or not being treated with dignity. It is believing people who are marginalized in your community about their experiences. One of the things I've experienced, and I've done this, by the way, with a very close colleague and friend of mine, that when she had an experience where somebody was being racist to her, and my response to her, without realizing the connotation of it, was to say, "Are you sure?" And when I think about it, I think, oh my gosh, the way that came across was that I didn't believe her. And I think what people who are feeling marginalized, who are feeling that their experiences are not being believed, we need to believe them, because for them to speak out, and that goes back to the issues of respect, that when they are going to speak out against somebody or a group of people that have more power and more respect in their community, and they're going to take the risk to speak out, they know that people are not going to say thank you. When you're in this position, that people are not going to say, oh my gosh, for the most part, you're so right, let's believe you. For the most part, dominant groups will silence in some ways, ridicule, laugh, not take seriously in some way, create big fights of all different kinds of things, because they don't want to acknowledge people's experiences. People who don't have power know that, who have less power, they know that. So to speak out about it is even that much more difficult. And so we need to believe them. That is, as an ally, regardless of what we're talking about, believe people. And then the other part is do your homework. So, one of the things that we need to really, and look at primary sources and look at people of different viewpoints. We've got to really be able to do our homework, so we're not putting it on the people who represent these marginalized communities for them to teach us, because they're exhausted. So, let me say to you this way. And we didn't go over this before, but this is just my experience. I could be wrong, but Laura and Gavin could have different experience. My experience working in white majority schools, where there is a minority population, for example, that's in that white school, that they are having to deal with, little things, big things, even with their good friends, where racist things are being said, or things where they're like, man, why are you seeing this? And it's like, do I have to school this person constantly, or can I just have a friendship with this person? And lots of times those kids, you just don't want to fight every battle, so you don't say anything. And you don't want to make things uncomfortable. And so you put up with stuff that you don't want to, or from teachers, and you don't want to do it, so you just take it. And it's a huge weight on your shoulders. And that, for me, is we can lighten that burden on those young people, for example, that would be enormous, because that means that that we are together that we see our community, that we need to take care of every single person in that community. And that can be, and when we can do that, it's not just about like the one kid, the one marginalized kid, or the one minority kid, is that when we take care of those kids, when we uphold their dignity, when we believe that, when we allow for discourse, as the way that Gavin and Laura talked about, what happens is that all the other kids see that it's okay to be messy, and it's okay to come forward when you're having a problem, and it's okay to feel sad about things, and that you can go to adults for help and support. So it's not just about being able to help that one kid. It's also about being able to protect and help your kid and all the other kids in the school and in the community. Gavin, Laura, we're getting sort of close. I'm going to read this question, but why don't you, if you want to have anything to comment or school me on, tell me something different, or tell people who are watching about something different, please.
I just thought of some like comparisons when you're talking about saying you're an ally. That's like saying you're like, if you say that you're kind, you have to show that with your actions, and you have to constantly do kind things to people. And the same thing is, if you say you're an ally, you have to go out and talk to people about issues and educate them and find ways to support minorities. And I mean, whatever you're being an ally to and stuff like that. And then let me think of the other one while Gavin says what.
Gavin, you want to say something?
Yeah. I just kind of lost thought of my track.
That's okay.
What I wanted to say was, I love the ally thing. The ally thing is definitely something that you got to live out every day. It can't be something that you just, it's not something that you don't reach it. And it's not like you reach it and you stop and that's it. You got to continue to pursue it. It's something that you chase after. Another thing that I know I've talked about is one of our mottos at Valor is influence through excellence. And I think it's such a bad motto because it puts pressure on the kids at the school. I mean, you see everybody trying to have the best grades, everybody they're fighting to get into colleges. They feel like they're expected to do well and be able to perform, especially if they're at this level of school. And it puts so much pressure on the kids, and it's ridiculous. I mean, I know a lot of kids that have felt that way, and a lot of times when we have discussions about some of the stresses of life we feel, or the pressures of life we feel as teenagers, that's definitely one of the best, or the big, most common things that show up is the fact that we feel like we're pressured to be perfect, whether it's by our parents, by the school, by society. It seems like we have to be perfect people. And it's not true. It's the faster, the more that we can help young people understand that it's okay not to be perfect. It's okay not to be not in the best place where you're not 100%. It's okay for that. As soon as we get that, the better we can understand that people will go out for help. People will understand, or the young people that will understand that that they know that it's not okay, and they'll reach out to other people and be like, I'm not in a good place right now. I need some help, or asking for help, asking for advice, taking the advice of others. The better we can get to that idea of thinking, and the further we can get away from thinking that we have to be perfect, the closer we get to thinking that it's okay to not be perfect. It's okay not to be the greatest, not to be the best. The faster we can get to that, the better, because we'll be able to speak out and be able to really share our experiences and open up to others, and not feel like we're wrong, or we're not perfect, or we're not what you guys expect us to be. So that's one thing that is really important.
Thank you for saying that, because schools love to have these kinds of slogans, and then they put them all over the place. And they don't mean it. I don't think we really have realized the import of these kinds of slogans on our kids, and then we say them over and over and over again. And it is exhausting, and we are seeing the cost of this. And I would hope that schools actually, what's one of the things I do is talk to them about these kinds of slogans, is that it really is contributing to young people feeling like they cannot come forward with a problem. So you are not a billboard of your achievements. You are a human being that's messy. And speaking to that, there's a couple of questions that we've gotten that I want to be able to address quickly. which is that speaking of, being messy is, one of the things that happens, especially with racism, is people say, I'm not racist. Okay, I work on these issues all the time. I definitely have racist moments. People who work on anti-racism stuff have racist moments. People who are, say lots of things that maybe are racist have moments when they're not racist. So we are all raised with biases that we don't even understand, we aren't even aware of that we are doing. Some we're aware of, and some we're not aware of. And the more that we can just say to ourselves, wow, you know what? Growing up in this culture, growing up in my family, growing up with this combination of who I am as a person, there's some good things about it. And there's some not such great things about it. And so if we could just accept like that racism is, and these kinds of discrimination and ways of seeing somebody as less than is unfortunately something that happens throughout, which by the way, does not mean we don't stop it, right? Just because it is, we don't go like, oh, okay, well, this is just the way it is. We have actual executive functioning. So we need to be able to challenge the norms of just, accepting people with that we're not treating them with dignity. So if we can just say, yeah, I have grown up just like everybody else in this world. I do have racist moments. That is a really, really important thing for us to be able to acknowledge. And I don't care how liberal or progressive you are, that you're like, or whatever you are, other side. Whenever I hear somebody saying, I'm not racist, I'm thinking to myself, well, you're not thinking about how we are in the world, because it's just the way we are. And so we can address it by being on a journey of being an ally and being aware and being educated and being engaged. That is the way that we change these things. And then I have one more question, and I'm mindful of time. And Laura, I want to make sure you get something to say. Is what is advice for if you're in a group and in a group and you want to have a difficult conversation? I don't care what the topic is about what that difficult conversation is. You have to have those norms. The norms are based on those principles. And so I've worked with a lot of school boards, for example, who have been very, very in conflict with each other this year. And as you can imagine, and having the principles as your starting place of this is what if we're going to be a part of this conversation, these are the principles that we all agree to. And that is the way in which we're going to have these conversations. And then I don't like the call out, call in thing, because I personally don't. But I just think we should call it for what it is, which is, all right, we agreed to this principle. I'm not feeling like that's happening right now. And so those principles are the norms that set the expectations for how you have a group discussion about any difficult conversation. All right. Laura, what did you want to say? Because I had a feeling that you wanted to say something, and then we're going to wrap it up with those two last questions. Remember, I was going to ask the people and you.
I just had that one last comparison, and it was when you're talking about when people say they feel as like discriminated.
Yes. That's okay.
And people don't believe them. It's a lot of times when people, and it's hard to talk about, and the fact that they're even coming forward and talking to you about it. I think that happens a lot too with when someone feels like they've been sexually assaulted and people deny that that's what happened, and they say, no, that didn't happen, or like what you're wearing, like, or in this case, where you come from. And I think that that's just another comparison of another way to think about it. And I think comparing different things like that helped me process it better. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought that might help.
All right. Well, so it is now 7:29. So I want to ask the people that are watching, or when you do watch, what is one thing that you want to remember from being with us? So something I said, something Gavin said, something Laura said, something you thought. That one thing that I want you to like, what do I want to remember? Like, 10 hours from now, no, you will be asleep. And well, for those of us watching right now, but like, the next day, what do I want to remember? And so I'm going to ask Gavin and Laura to answer that question. And then I'm going to close it with one more thing. So Gavin, what do you want to remember? What do you want other people to remember from today?
I definitely want to remember the asking questions, curious questions and non-curious questions. I feel like asking questions and trying to get to the main reason why someone believes something, why someone thinks something is the most important thing. That's the easiest way to resolve a conflict. If you understand where they're coming from and if they understand where you're coming from, it's a lot easier to see each other's sides and understand what's going on.
Yeah.
That's definitely what I want to remember from tonight. And then I also kind of want to hit on this last question that was in the chat about how can I be an ally for our vulnerable community members when the vast majority of our community doesn't believe discrimination is happening here. And the one thing that I want to say is it's not going to happen overnight. Change isn't going to happen overnight. It's going to be a process. It's something that we might not ever see. It might go on forever, but it's something that we got to work towards and really grind and focus on. So what I would say is continue to try and pour into those other people that don't believe it or don't believe it's happening, don't see it, by asking curious questions, things like that. And while you're doing that, that's also being an ally to the vulnerable people, because you're using your voice to help them, and you're taking actions to helping them. And then also it's important by showing that you care. It's important to show that to the younger kids. I mean, the younger kids look up to the parents, they look up to the older people in our community. So when they see you speaking out against this or trying to tell somebody, oh, well, they're trying to they're not convince somebody, but trying to get somebody to think differently or understand something in the way they understand it, or just trying to see how they understand it and trying to fight for these vulnerable people in the community, they'll do the same, because we see you guys do it. We follow your footsteps. So it's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to be something that's going to happen quickly. It's going to be a long process. It's going to be a fight, and we're going to have to continue to work our way towards trying to be better as a community, trying to be better as a state, a world, and all that.
Thanks. Laura, what would you like to remember from this evening?
I think that even if someone has not earned your respect, that does not mean you cannot treat them with dignity, because everyone deserves to feel worthy and everyone deserves kindness in their life. And just even people that haven't been kind to you and you don't respect, I mean, kind things aren't that hard to do. And I mean, as long as you're not putting other people down, it takes more of your energy to put someone down than to just not say anything at all. And just like Gavin said, the curious questions, just making sure that you make people feel worthy and not try and attack them in any way is a very important lesson that I think most people forget a lot.
Especially when they get angry about things and feel
I do
justified.
the same thing. I mean,
Right.
it's everyone, it's kids,
Right.
it's parents, it's everyone.
So, right, there's no excuse for bad manners. I don't care how righteous you think your cause is. So, all right. So, let's see. And then a participant said that their takeaway is, can you help me understand X? And then you repeat what the person said. So you all, thank you so much for being with me and for spending this time with me. And really, if you want to, continue the conversation with me, it's easy. I'm at curious@culturesofdignity.com. And I want to continue the conversation, especially if you disagree. So thank you so much, Curtis. And thank you, Gavin and Laura, for working with me on this, and for everybody who attended the calls beforehand for today. Really appreciate the time and commitment from the community and trusting me to be part of your community for a short time.
Rosalind, there was one thing, please do a short promo about the tiny guides that we are getting.
Oh my gosh, right. So
please,
go ahead. So we have, and we made them available to you all, these social emotional learning tools that are very easy. They're PDFs. They're 18 component skills for social emotional learning, like emotional granularity, like I talked about today, or managing anger, or metacognition, or frustration points. There are 18 of them, and like how your brain functions. And so teachers can use them, parents can use them with young people, or people can just use them themselves. And so you all have the opportunity to get access to the tiny guide. So at culturesofdignity.com, that's us. You can see the tiny guides right away. And I think, Curtis, through you all, you can get them as well.
Yes, we will be offering them. That'll be part of filling out a survey on what you learned and how we can get better in the future, us and our partners in delivering more educational opportunities like this. So please, when you get that notification, fill that out, and that will automatically put you in for one of those.
Oh, great. Excellent. All right. Thank you, Curtis. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
See
you.
you soon.
Really appreciate everyone participating. I hope you found it very educational, and we look forward to seeing you again.